You guys know we're coming up on NFL season. You guys know an NFL kicker has to take some steps back to prepare for a kick. That's how I need to take some step backs to prepare for my yo, so I don't blow your guys' eardrum out. Yo! What is going on, Jack Maller Show listeners? Welcome back to another episode of Mailbag Monday. It is 6 p.m. Eastern on the dot, and here we go. I've got a hell of a show for you guys today. We're getting better at this thing. Us together, us as a family, week over week, we make progress. Today is going to be a banger. So without further ado, let's go. I'm talking to you all at a Bitcoin price of $110,080. We've dipped all the way down to $2.19 trillion market cap as an asset class. Our all-time high remains at $124,400. So we are officially 11.5% down from the all-time high that was set only a week and a half ago at August 13th, 2025. For those of you that don't deal with Eastern time and Central time, Pacific time, UTC, fuck that bullshit. Oop, excuse me, kids show. You deal in block time, block height. The time change Satoshi created. I'm talking to you all at block height 911,690. That is the last Bitcoin block mined since I hit record. Good morning, good day, good afternoon to wherever you are. This is Mailbag Monday, and today's episode is titled Fiscal Dominance, Why the Math Only Works with Bitcoin. Look at us. We got an agenda. Hey, but I'm not a podcaster. But we got ourselves an agenda. Look at this show, leveling up a little bit. Only the best. This is the caviar of live streams. Just kidding. There's no ads. There's no budget here. It's just me in an empty closet. But I do have an agenda for you. Chapter 1, we'll talk about numbers don't lie. They don't lie because they can't lie. We're going to walk through the fiscal math. We'll talk about Powell at J-hole, the housing affordability crisis, emerging market games, AI, and we'll talk about some Bitcoin. Are you ready? Let's go. Okay, numbers don't lie. So I wanted to kick off today, chapter 1. Sorry, I'm rushing into the agenda here because I know you guys really don't like when I drag. So numbers don't lie for me is because Besson's come on recently, big PR push for tariff revenue. Obviously, the Trump administration, a lot of their brand is tariffs. A lot of Trump's brand is making money. He's rich. He's a billionaire. He's a businessman in D.C. We're going to get rich. We're going to make money. We're going to bring back jobs, yada, 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 yada. But at the same time, they desperately need to cut rates. And we'll talk about Jerome Powell in Jackson Hole and J-hole. And so those two don't square each other, right? If you're a genius at making money, if you're richer than everything in the world and you're a genius and you're the best and you're the businessman, then why do you need rates so cheap? Those two don't make sense. If the economy is booming, then don't change anything, right? And so clearly there's a hidden story. There's a hidden agenda. And what I wanted to do with you guys is walk through the math because as this chapter is titled, numbers do not lie. They do not lie because they cannot lie. I actually was getting in this argument with some of my buddies in a group chat. We were arguing Michael Jordan or LeBron James. Where do you guys think I sit? Come on. What do you think? I'm a shitcoiner? Michael Jordan's the GOAT. And the stats back that up. The numbers don't lie. And the point I was making is, oftentimes in the world, we need to rely on objective truths. Objective truths help format our view and relationship with the world. It is incredibly important that we're governed by the physical laws of the universe. We're governed by Mother Nature. We're governed by objective truths. Because if we do not bound ourselves to the physical realities that are, we're just living in Narnia and there's no point. And we're going to drift off into fantasy land and nothing's going to work. Society's going to decay. So with that, and without further ado, let's walk through the numbers. First, let's hear from our boy, Secretary of Treasury, aka the CFO of the United States of America, Mr. Scott Bessent. Let me mute myself and shut the F up. I know some of you guys DM me. You're like, my kids listen to this show, and I feel really bad. So let me not curse and mute myself, and we'll hear from Bessent talk about tariff revenue.
President Trump and I are laser focused on paying down the debt. So I had been saying that tariff revenue could be $300 billion this year. I'm going to have to revise that up substantially. So I think that we're going to bring down the deficit to GDP. We'll start paying down debt. And then at a point that can be used as an offset to the American people.
So Bessent has been on this PR tour talking about how successful tariffs have been. He's saying tariff revenue could top $300 billion this year. I might have to revise that to the upside. I'm so successful. Trump is so successful. Trump's a genius. We're rich. We win. Everyone else loses. Okay. But at the same time, there's been a lot of struggle. And the title of this episode is about fiscal dominance, how the United States is in a terrible fiscal situation. Our debt is eating us alive. And they've been bullying the Federal Reserve, playing emergent market games. And so what's really going on? So first, I wanted to bring attention to this weak jobs report. And we're going to continually see the weak jobs data throughout this Mailbag Monday today. Weak jobs report on top of federal government tax receipts, S&P, and non-official corporate business. So what I want to show you guys here is jobs data is coming in really, really weak. The S&P is not performing. It's trending down. Now, the problem is this is also a reflection of tariffs. And so really the point here is this. Somebody has to lose. There is no free lunch. There is no silver bullet. We'll take a look at, here's the United States expenses. And really the problem is, if you look at the green, that's 2025. If you look at the blue, that's 2024. And so our expenses keep growing. You see how every single green bar is higher than the blue bar, except for education. So education got the MAGA, Elon Musk, got the, what was Elon's shit that already failed tremendously. Elon's going to come in. He's going to act like an entrepreneur. He's the greatest entrepreneur ever. He's going to cut. He's going to run this efficiently like a startup. And we're going to fix all the garbage in the U.S. We're going to fix our deficits to the moon. Oh, Doge. Brain fart. I couldn't even remember that nonsensical, stupid shitcoin of a plan. Education's the only department that got that treatment. You can see right over here. I don't know if you guys can see my mouse. The green is substantially lower than the blue. That's what cutting government spending looks like. Okay, let's check every other bar. Labor, no. Defense civil, no. Transportation, nope. Homeland security, nope. Let's go to the bigger ones. Do we lessen our defense budget? Nope. Seems like everyone talks a big game. Let's cut government spending. But when it comes to it, nobody wants to be defenseless in a world where people are going to war all the time. Okay, fair enough. What about health and human services? Do we cut that? Nope. What about Social Security? Here's my problem, and I'm going to talk about the boomers in a bit. People think I bully boomers. I don't bully. I speak truth. It's what this show is about. No ads, no bullshit. It's truth. Oop, no bull crap. Sorry, kids. Kid show. We don't cut anything. And so the point is this. We're still going to run a $2 trillion deficit this year. Your tariff revenue does nothing. Nada. It's trash. It's garbage. It's a distraction. In fact, tariffs are doing what? We know they're impacting jobs, and we know they're impacting stocks. We've talked about it on the show last week. How are they impacting stocks? Guys, if you give a company like Apple, you give a company like Ford, you give a company like Procter & Gamble, you give real businesses multi-billion-dollar hits on an annual basis. That impacts their margins. That impacts their profits. That therefore impacts their stock price. When the dollar was, and currently still is, but is on its way not to be, the world reserve currency, Dollar's the world reserve currency, and don't even any currency could be the world reserve currency. What that does is it hyper-financializes the market. So the United States hyper-financialized. They exported their factory jobs. They exported their manual labor. They exported their ability to produce stuff. That's now all in China. China took all that. China's the world's factory. And the people that make our iPhones, the people that make our services, the people that make our goods, our tools, this mic, this computer, everything around me, they're in China. Apple produces the iPhone in China. Why? Because the U.S. is hyper-financialized. It's all about your stock price. It's all about increasing margins, increasing profits, stock go up. So if you want to unwind those capital flows and impose tariffs, okay, fine. You're going to get your $300 billion of tariff revenue. Stock go down. Stock go down, federal government tax receipts go down. The federal government tax receipts are tremendously important to the government continuing to finance this Ponzi scheme. Look at the red here and its correlation to the green and the blue. The green and the blue are leading indicators, and they are coming down. Remember tariff liberation day, liberation week? Remember how that worked out for stocks? Not so well. And on the jobs report, yeah, guess what? Newsflash. If you're going to take billions of dollars away from corporations in the form of a hidden tax and tariffs, they're going to employ less people. They're going to have layoffs. They're going to stop hiring. And so it really just comes down to, there is a hole in the balance sheet. There is a loss. That loss has to be realized, period. Meaning someone has to lose. The idea that politicians will pitch you, oh, I created this silver bullet. Oh, I created magic. Oh, I cured everyone's woes. I'm sorry, that's just not how objective truth works. That's not how numbers work. 2 + 2 cannot equal 5. I'm sorry. Who is going to lose? You want tariffs? Sure. A lot more people will be unemployed. The stock market will perform poorly. I mean, I don't care. I own Bitcoin for this exact reason. I opt out of the fact that someone in Washington, D.C. is going to elect who loses. By buying Bitcoin, I say my time, my energy, out of this equation. I don't know who's going to lose, and I don't care. But I just wanted to open up and say, as we go about the national press tour of how Trump is the greatest businessman that's ever been in the White House, and by the way, Democrats listen to this show, Republicans listen to this show, Libertarians listen to this show. You guys should know, I've never voted. This isn't about my political view. This is about how that doesn't matter. And so when we look at this, we see, okay, the government is incapable of reducing health services, Social Security. They won't touch it. Because here, I could tell you how to solve the problem, but I can't tell you how to get reelected, right? If you were to take everyone's Social Security benefits away, the boomers wouldn't be happy. You wouldn't get reelected. The one thing they can control here is Treasury. This third one right here. How can they get the green one down? Cut rates. Rates are how much the U.S. government pays on the debt that it has outstanding. And so the reason that Besson says, tariffs are killing it. We're superstars. But also, please cut rates. In fact, if you don't, we're going to throw you in jail. That's America dressed like Argentina right there. That's emerging market shit. So to summarize chapter 1, tariffs make for good politics, but only rate cuts keep the system alive. This is the essence of rates over growth equals fiscal dominance equals Bitcoin. Your $300 billion leaves us with still a $2 trillion deficit this year. And your tariffs are already impacting the job market and already impacting stocks. And we know that stocks can't go down in the United States. The S&P 500 is the U.S. savings account. It is the vehicle to where in which they derive a substantial amount of revenue, which is tax receipts. So don't get confused. Don't get distracted. Tariffs are politics. They aren't a real solution. The numbers don't lie because they can't lie. We're talking objective truths. The reason they've been so hard on the Fed and the reason they've been so hard on Powell is because of this slide. The only green bar they can get down is Treasury because they can bully their way into interest rates being lower. Which leads us to our next section, Powell at J-hole. One of my favorite macro analysts is pretty funny. He tweeted out, Powell's coming to town, better lube up your J-hole. So, hey, shoot, kids show. I couldn't refrain, though. It was such a funny joke at the time. So we had this gentleman waltz into Wyoming. New York Times, Powell sends strongest signal yet that interest rate cuts are coming. Jerome H. Powell said the balance of risks across the economy had started to shift. Raising the odds, the central bank lowers borrowing costs as its next meeting in September. From Bloomberg, key takeaways from Fed Chair Powell's Jackson Hole speech. Let me zoom in on the part I care about. Quote, in the near term, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside, risks of employment to the downside. A challenging situation. No shit, Captain Obvious. Thank you, Jerome Powell. No wonder you lead the price of the dollar. The second bullet's the most important. Powell said the Fed has adopted a new framework that removes a reference to the central bank seeking inflation that averages 2% over time and one to it making decisions on employment based on shortfalls from its maximum level. So Jerome Powell, this old guy, showed up to Wyoming and walked into a hotel and decided that he would start lowering rates in September, or at least he strongly suggested he would. And he noted that risks to inflation are real. If he does this, you will see a lot more inflation. But he also noted risk to employment, meaning job growth is slowing. It's in a decline. Things like tariffs, things like AI are deeply threatening the ability for Americans to be employed. We know that stocks are hurting. So what decision does he have to make? He has to pick a lesser of evils. And at the end of the day, push comes to shove, the Fed is going to support the government. We know this. And so what did Jerome Powell do? He supported the government. So this is federal employment tax receipts from the U.S. Treasury. What I want to show you guys in the yellow, what's highlighted down there at the bottom, that's 7.2%. We're seeing like record all-time high tax receipts for the U.S. government. So assets are at all-time highs, right? Stock market all-time high. 2 weeks ago, Bitcoin was at an all-time high. Gold all-time high. And so people are getting wealthy from asset inflation, from the dollar weakening and assets getting strong. People are then using that to buy stuff, go on vacation, finance new businesses. And when they do that, they pay a capital gains tax. Now, shout out Strike. I get to borrow against my Bitcoin, so I don't have to give any of it to the government. But point is, the government is generating all-time high tax receipts. And despite those all-time high tax receipts, our fiscal deficits are growing. In the blue, 2023, green, 2024, orange, 2025. What do you notice? These orange-yellow bars are exploding. And so the point remains the same. Cool. Hey, cool tariffs, bro. Guess what? They don't matter. They don't matter. What matters? Interest rates. They're the only thing that matters. So the United States is starting to dress like China and Argentina. Emergent market bullshit. Sorry for my language, kids. Turn it off. This episode's for dad and mom. I'm going to get a little heated on this episode because it's just a bunch of nonsense. Getting on Fox News and parading around like you've solved the problem. They haven't solved anything. And by the way, your central banker, if you're American and you're listening to this, just walked into a hotel in Wyoming and said, I'm going to choose the government over inflation. Welcome to a more expensive life. Sorry, not sorry. That's what he just said. And I went out and tweeted, I said, imagine hinging your Bitcoin conviction on what some random old guy says about pieces of paper. Couldn't be me. Stay humble and stack sats. Because take a step back for a second. It's the reality of the situation. Some guy, I don't know much about the guy. He wasn't elected by me. He gets off a plane in Wyoming for some reason. Why Wyoming? Who knows? I have no idea. And he just decided to burden the American people with a more expensive life in the foreseeable future to the benefit of the government and all the mistakes that they made even before I was alive. And people sit and listen to that to decide if Bitcoin is important or not. You're missing the whole point. Have you lost your mind? That's exactly why I use Bitcoin. I don't care what that guy has to say. That's the whole reason I use Bitcoin in the first place. I mean, this tweet was intended to show the generational gap and the big difference between analog and digital. You think people my age want to read a newspaper about what some old guy said about pieces of paper? My generation has gotten demolished by this system. I don't care what he says. I'll go, there's a next chapter here about housing affordability. These people have utterly destroyed the quality of life of my generation. I've given this speech in Prague, so I'm not going to get into it too much. But my friends have killed themselves and committed suicide. My friends have gotten addicted to alcohol and opioids. There's a record level of antidepressants being consumed by people my age. And to watch this guy stroll on up and say, yeah, inflation's real, but we need to finance the government. This is exactly why I don't own a single dollar. You will not catch me with a positive net worth in USD. It is disgusting. And so, anyways, if it wasn't any more clear, did tariffs solve our problem? No. And if your Ford stock goes down, now you know why. Not their fault. I mean, it's a $2 billion hit they just took. And if your buddy gets fired, can't afford a home, misses rent payments, delinquencies on his credit card, becomes an alcoholic, sorry, tariffs, bro. They do nothing to the deficit. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And to be clear, I'm a fan of this administration on net. The last administration debanked me a handful of times, audited by the IRS. I mean, I was harassed. But this is why I vote orange. It's all a bunch of garbage trash. So to end this chapter, Powell admitted the bond math doesn't work. The Fed is choosing inflation over collapse. Bitcoin thrives in this trade-off. The good news, we've engineered an exit door. Think of Bitcoin that way. The building is lit on fire, and we've engineered a way out for everybody. Now, the price, the ticket to get out becomes more expensive with time. When I got into Bitcoin, a ticket out was $50. Now a ticket out's $110,000. The cost to exit isn't equal, but the opportunity is. All of you can get out. That's what Bitcoin is. It's an engineered exit door, an engineered life raft. How expensive that trip is for you, that's up to you. But make no mistake, the decision was made in broad daylight. The government will be financed at the expense of the people. Assets will soar. Bitcoin the highest. Can't say I didn't warn you. Now on to housing affordability crisis. So another interesting development as financial data and economic data starts rolling in is the sentiment around owning a home in the United States. From Reuters, U.S. home builder sentiment dips back to lowest level since late 2022. For those that can't put two and two together, late 2022 is when FTX exploded. Shortly before Silicon Valley Bank exploded, it was after the fastest rate hike ever. So the fact that sentiment is back to those levels, but the stock market's at an all-time high, Bitcoin's near all-time highs, gold's at all-time highs, and we're talking about cutting rates, that's astounding. That's astounding, and that's bad news. Most U.S. families cannot afford median-priced homes. I continue to read this article. The homeownership dream is increasingly out of reach for most Americans, with 70, not 17, 70, like the number larger than 69, 70% of U.S. households are unable to afford a median-priced home. Almost 3/4 of the American population cannot afford the average home. It's funny even saying that out loud. That would make the home not so average. Right? Now, digging into this data, it's actually fascinating because you'd have to ask yourself why. And this work here, shout out Luke Groman. Luke is my favorite macro analyst by far, hands down. Whenever he does a podcast, I immediately stop what I'm doing and I turn it on. He's the best. He's the GOAT in my eyes. This works from him. If you haven't already, I deeply, deeply suggest checking out his weekly newsletter or all of his work. Follow him on Twitter. Check out his business. But this insight comes from Luke. And the insight is that real estate prices, so the housing market, has actually started to decouple from NAHB, from rates. Obviously, what you would assume is that the cost to live is deeply correlated with the cost to expense owning a home. And if you look at these red arrows, shortly after COVID, they started to segregate. They started to divorce each other, and they started to move in opposite directions. And the insight here is very profound. So the NAHB housing index is now below COVID lows, but home prices don't actually track the sentiment anymore, meaning that sentiment is going down, but home prices are seemingly going up. And the insight from Luke is that since 2021, housing prices follow money supply, inflation, and stocks, not rates. And this is a huge problem because the more profound insight is that housing is experiencing severe asset inflation, is that people are using real estate as a savings account to hedge against dollar debasement. And what that's going to do is it's going to drive the price of a home artificially up. For example, let me tell you guys a real life story. I have a friend who's recently married and he's looking to buy his first home because they're going to try and get pregnant and have their first child. This friend has spent a year trying to buy a home. Every single time they've tried 3 times now, they've put an offer on a home. They've gotten outbid by someone who isn't even going to live in the home. I'm going to say that again. My friend, a 30-year-old, wants to be a first-time homeowner so that they can raise their child with some space in a yard. They've been unable to acquire said home because the market has been outbidding them, and the market is people twice their age that already have a house. They're outbidding them with all cash because they're trying to get a dollar debasement hedge. They're treating real estate like a savings account. This is a widespread problem. So if we go to the next slide, this is TLT, NASDAQ, and the SPDR. Look at that in 2020, 2021. Look at that. Crazy. Housing and the NASDAQ have traded the same. It's now a dollar debasement hedge. People have monetized real estate to such a degree that rates don't matter anymore. Now, the key insight here, when you dig into the market that Luke really tipped me off on, is who's buying up all these homes. There is a significant amount of wealth concentrated in the baby boomer class. And the reason is fairly obvious. These people were born and started to accumulate wealth right before the divorce of the gold standard. So assets were relatively attainable and acquirable and affordable. And then everyone got their home, everyone got their stocks, everyone got their gold. And then they started just to print a bunch of money. And so there are people walking around right now that bought their house for $10,000 and that house is worth $5 million. And so the baby boomers have over 50% of the total wealth in the United States of America. There's over $150 trillion of wealth in the United States, and the baby boomers have $64 trillion of it. Oh no, they have $78 trillion of it. Excuse me. And supposedly what's happening is the baby boomers are rolling out of things like treasuries and into real estate. Oftentimes buying real estate and housing for their kids or buying investment real estate. They're buying real estate not to actually live in, but to then rent out. So they're removing a homeowner, a first-time homeowner that wants to raise a family that's 30. They're removing them from the market. They're pricing them out. And so frustrating. I'm sorry, because I know there's been so many comments sometimes on my stuff like, you're too mean to boomers. You're mean to old people. Stop ragging on old people. I'm not ragging on old people because obviously, guys, like if you're a boomer Bitcoiner that's a supporter of me, I don't have a problem with you. Of course not. And I actually, in fact, really appreciate your support. But I do feel responsible to represent my generation. It's been dealt an awful hand. Cheated, lied to, scammed. Because, guys, here, let me actually go back real quick. Let me show you guys something. Let's go back to the government's expenses right here. If boomers really cared, they'd say, you know what? We got to cut our deficits. We've created so much debt for the younger generation. They can't afford a home. They're addicted to opioids. They're committing suicide. They're on antidepressants. We'll give up our Social Security. We don't deserve it anyway. But you don't do that. The boomer class doesn't do that. No, we want more Social Security. We want more health and health services. So we're unhealthy. We're sick because we're not taking care of ourselves. We're eating seed oils. We're eating processed sugars. We're eating junk. And we want the government to pay for our health and subsidize the fact that we can't take care of ourselves. And we want Social Security. And who's ultimately paying for all that? My friends. And now they're going into the housing market and they're pricing out people that actually need a home to buy a home that they're not even going to live in. And it's not their fault either. This is all a function of poor monetary policy. But my frustration is very real. As people talk a big game. I hate how they're treating our kids. The economy is so bad. I'm worried about my son. All right, forfeit your Social Security. Stop eating donuts. Take care of yourself so we can bring our health and health services bill down. Sorry, because you're talking to a millennial, and I'm a millennial by like 12 months. You're talking to a young guy that eats steak, eggs, lift weights, gets sun, and stacks Bitcoin. Because I had to go out and earn this life on my own. It's very frustrating. I really hurt for my friends. It sucks. 70% of America can't afford a median home. And it's all a problem with monetary policy. So anyways, I'll keep going. Get off my high horse here for a second. So if you look at the housing against gold over the last 10 years, it's down 32%. So I just want to show you guys that real estate is not a savings account. It's not intended to be a dollar debasement trade. It's being misused. It's being mismonetized. Okay. Furthermore, the stock market isn't as well. If you look at the S&P 500 against gold since 1971. We've talked about this on the show a million times. The stock market is booming. Look at that red bar. Killing it. Oh yeah, who here bought Nvidia? Yeah, we're the best. But against gold, it's down 20%. So check this. You are better off just holding gold since 1971 than investing in stocks. I'm going to say that again. Gold has outperformed the stock market since the divorce of the gold standard. So this booming stock market is a scam. It's a lie. It's monetary debasement manipulating you. You've already lived through Great Depression level of stock performance, just in gold terms, not in dollar terms. Stop measuring things in dollars. So if you think real estate is a good investment, it can't even outperform gold. And you guys already know where I'm about to go with this. This is real estate measured in Bitcoin over the last 10 years. You're not reading that incorrectly. That's minus 100%. It's down 99.9%. I had to put it to 5 years just to get a number that wasn't 100. Over the last 5 years, real estate's down 82% against Bitcoin. So when I say Bitcoin is the best expression of monetary debasement, it is the exit door we built to get out. Real estate is not a savings account. We have to find a way to not monetize it. Stock market is not a savings account. Bitcoin is the savings account. I mean, Bitcoin against the S&P 500. 99% down. But no, your stock portfolio is killing it, bro. Keep posting it on TikTok. You're killing it. Kills me. It's just so frustrating. Because in a world without this fiat currency nonsense, everyone would be able to raise their child in a home. Because again, I'll explain this concept one more time on this show. Guys, money is the market good that you do not consume. What do I mean by that? I acquire an airplane to fly. I consume that airplane via travel. I acquire a car to drive. I consume that car to get to my next destination. I acquire a cheeseburger to eat. I need those calories for energy. I acquire a home to live in. I need that house for shelter, right? Now, I acquire Bitcoin not to eat, not to fly, not to drive, and not to sleep in. I acquire Bitcoin to save and then later exchange for the things I need in my life. That is me using Bitcoin as money. Let me tell you another example. Let's say my friend John grows bananas and I grow apples. And I want some of John's bananas. But John doesn't want any of my apples. He says, in order to get my bananas, I need grapes. I use my apples to exchange for grapes. I use the grapes to exchange for the bananas. I have just monetized grapes. I did not acquire the grapes to consume them and eat them. I acquired the grapes to save and then later exchange for the thing that I need, which is bananas. Do you understand? And so monetizing an asset in the marketplace, using something as money, is very simply acquiring it without the intent to consume it. You're acquiring it with the intent to save it and then later exchange it for the things you need in your life. So when someone acquires an art piece and they're not displaying that art on their wall and they're keeping it in the cellar to later sell later, they have monetized that art. If someone outbids my friend for a home that they don't intend to live in, they have monetized that real estate. If someone buys a basket of stocks that they know nothing about and they aren't making a direct, knowledgeable investment. They have monetized that stock index. We need to demonetize all of the market goods that aren't money. Because what happens is when we treat houses like money, the people that actually need the house can't afford them anymore. And the people that have 10 houses buy their 11th. 70% of America can't live in a home. You're having children raised in tiny little closet apartments where their parents can't afford groceries and they're both working 2 jobs, and so they're not home and their education is poor and society degrades. We need to demonetize these market goods and monetize what is meant to be money. Do you understand? That's what Bitcoin is for. That's why Bitcoin should not be compared to Ethereum, to Dogecoin, to Solana, any of that crap. Because money, the size of money, is about $500 trillion. It's about half of all the things we own today we've monetized because we've just created value and we just want to bring it with us tomorrow. And central banks and governments have robbed us of that ability to do that with fiat because they print it and they debase it. And so we have to look to alternatives to bring the value we've created with us tomorrow. Bitcoin restores that for everyone. So in the future, Bitcoin's price will rise because all wealth looking to be carried forward into the future will be saved in Bitcoin. And it'll bring down the price of all other market goods that have incorrectly been monetized. Because that's the thing. You know, if I've learned anything in my life so far, change comes with action. It doesn't come with words. You know, there's 2 powerful forms of expression. Words and exit. And when words are no longer sufficient, exit is the only answer. And so the way I like to think about Bitcoin is nobody was listening. So we built the alternative ourselves. You know, if you're my age, I would say stop waiting for the Fed to cut rates. Stop waiting for mortgage rates to lower. Stop waiting for the right president. Stay humble and stack sats is the only way you're going to be able to raise your kid with a yard. Bitcoin is the only solution that doesn't rely on protests. It doesn't rely on politicians. It doesn't rely on changing someone else's mind. So anyways, for this reason, me and my team created this video that I posted today on the internet, and it's gotten a decent amount of traction. So I want to play it for you guys, and we'll move on to the next chapter. Bitcoin is going to demonetize real estate. A house is not supposed to be a savings account. It's not supposed to be what you exchange your effort and labor for. You acquire a house to consume it and live in it. It's not a money. Unfortunately, because the world has been robbed of money, robbed of the market good that they're supposed to save and exchange in, and that market good has been manipulated and debased and controlled, people have had to resort to things like real estate as money. And so real estate is distorted. It's artificially expensive. And so Bitcoin will dematerialize that for all of the money that's in real estate, not to consume it, but rather to save in it. That money will go to Bitcoin over time. And what that will do is it will drive the Bitcoin price up and it'll drive the real estate prices down. Guys, when I got into Bitcoin, my dream house was 100,000 Bitcoins. And then some years later, my dream house was 10,000 Bitcoins. And then some years later, my dream house was 1,000. And then some years later, my dream house was 100. And then some years later, my dream house was 10. Now, the average American home you can get for 3-4 coins. So I think within the next decade, you can get a median-sized house in the United States for less than 1 Bitcoin. And so the best way to become a homeowner and a purchaser of land, of real estate, is to stay humble and stack sats. Bitcoin will make housing affordable again. It will empower the youth. It will bring us back to a world where all the market goods that we're meant to consume are consumable goods, and all the goods that we're meant to save and monetize are money. And the hardest money will win. And if you look at the numbers, that money is Bitcoin. Next chapter, stablecoin wars. So it was absolutely worth mentioning to you guys. If you didn't see it, Kenya, African country, in talks with China to convert their dollar rail loan into yuan. This is massive, and it's not that China wants to be the world reserve currency. China's actually talking about backing the yuan with gold, like a gold-backed currency again. This is China trying to de-dollarize, get off dollar rails, reduce their exposure to what's going on with the fiscal situation in the United States of America. Another one, China is worried about dollar-backed stablecoins. Beijing is speeding up plans to create systems it can monitor. Next, EU speeds up plans for digital euro after US stablecoin law. And so this is just further validation, as we've been talking about on this show, that stablecoins are a liquidity valve for all of the dollar liquidity and overall global liquidity that is to come. And we know for a fact, just on historical data, that these stablecoin liquidity valves end up in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is always anywhere between 2.5 and 10 times the size of the stablecoin market. And so as stablecoins grow, Bitcoin grows. And the quickest way to grow stablecoins is to grow Bitcoin. We know all of this for a fact. Luke, the guy I was shouting out earlier, so shout him out again. He tweeted, so what happens when China launches a 0% yielding CNY stablecoin backed by finite gold compared to 0% yielding US dollar stablecoins backed by infinite T-bills? Will the reaction of USD stablecoin proponents mirror the 7-minute abs guy from Something About Mary? I noted that Luke should check out Tether Gold. Tether actually launched a gold-backed stablecoin. You know, they're very strategic. They're very forward-looking. They're always one step ahead. But Luke points out a very prominent idea here, which is what China is likely going to do is say, here's a stablecoin that's not backed by future promises of the United States of America that's constantly getting debased. Here's a stablecoin backed by an actual finite precious metal. And I would not be surprised if we started to see stablecoins backed by Bitcoin, backed by a pile and pile and pile of Bitcoin. And so the stablecoin wars have absolutely begun. The notion that China doesn't care is wrong. China absolutely cares. And we're starting to see China's strategy here. They are not necessarily interested in being the world reserve currency because, as we've talked about on this show, being the world reserve currency is a curse. Triffin's dilemma. You have to have an artificially strong currency, which means your labor market evaporates. Your ability to produce things goes away. You import debt. Debt. It's a system that isn't sustainable and will collapse on itself. Nobody is watching the United States of America and saying, oh yeah, I want that. Nobody. So China wants to de-dollarize by using gold and, in my opinion, eventually Bitcoin when it gets big enough. So going back, I've shared this screenshot a million times. This is from our boy Scotty, CFO of America. Implementing the Genius Act is essential to securing American leadership in digital assets. Stablecoins will expand dollar access for billions across the globe and lead to a surge in demand for U.S. treasuries, which back stablecoins. It's a win-win-win for everyone involved, stablecoin users, stablecoin issuers, and the U.S. Treasury Department. And so just to refocus, stablecoins will continue to be a story. They'll continue to be the liquidity valve that exports to Bitcoin. I fundamentally believe that. I fundamentally believe the United States fully understands that they have a deep interest in Bitcoin because they have a deep interest in stablecoins. Stablecoins will become something that is competitive between nations like the US and China. It is a you can't ignore, you have to compete. And if China comes out with a gold-backed stablecoin, I think it is in the U.S. interest to come out with a Bitcoin-backed stablecoin. Maybe this has something to do with their strategic reserve plans. I have no idea. I stay away from politics. Just floating this idea out into the ether, out into the universe, letting it marinate, letting it simmer, letting it sear. I think this is where we're seeing it develop. And so this is the start of the stablecoin endgame, T-bills versus gold versus Bitcoin. Another way to think of stablecoins is that It's a competition of what backs them. And so if China comes out with a gold-backed stablecoin, what would you rather own if you're Kenyan? Do you want the one backed by UST bills, or do you want the one backed by gold? It's honestly an interesting question. I think over time it will be gold. And then inevitably, gold will compete with Bitcoin. And so we'll see, but eventually the hardest money wins. So we know who the winner will be with time. But the stablecoin war is officially on. Again, I think this is positive for global liquidity, which is very positive for Bitcoin. Next chapter, play emerging market games, win emerging market prizes. And of course, I'm talking about the United States. From the New York Times, in case you guys missed it, Intel agrees to sell the United States a 10% stake in its business. The deal is among the largest government interventions in a U.S. company since the rescue of the auto industry after the 2008 financial crisis. This tweet from Arthur Hayes sums up a lot of how I feel. American capitalism with Chinese characteristics. It will be interesting to see how the U.S. government intends to finance this. That is the key nugget to understand. Then we will know where credit will gush. Okay. The headline tweet here is really the important part for this chapter. American capitalism with Chinese characteristics. This was from this morning. Breaking, the U.S. government is reportedly planning to take state ownership in more private businesses. So Intel was just the beginning. Ah, man, this episode's just eating at my heart. Here is a recent clip from Trump talking about my backyard, Chicago.
Anywhere on earth. So, I really am honored that the National Guard has done such an incredible job working with the police. And we haven't had to bring in the regular military, which we're willing to do. We have to. And after we do this, we'll go to another location and we'll make it safe also. We're going to make our country very safe. We're going to make our cities very, very safe. Chicago's a mess. You have an incompetent mayor, grossly incompetent. And we'll straighten that one out probably next. That'll be our next one after this. And it won't even be tough. And the people in Chicago, Mr. Vice President, are screaming for us to come. They're wearing red hats, just like this one. But they're wearing red hats. African-American ladies, beautiful ladies, are saying, please, President Trump, come to Chicago. Please. I did great with the black vote, as you know, and they want something to happen. So I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York, and we're going to help with...
Deploying the military and the National Guard to one of the largest cities in the world, one of the largest cities in America. A former pioneer in financial markets, created derivatives as they know it, one of the biggest exchanges in the world here, the CME. And this is, guys, I mean, we talked about this a few episodes ago. This is play emergent market games and win emergent market prizes. When the United States runs fiscal dominance, pressures the Fed, weaponizes the dollar, that is emerging market behavior. Okay? And the prize you win is exactly what we're seeing. You guys want to know the other time I've seen the military deployed to the streets, like outside of a 7-Eleven, was El Salvador. The United States is starting to look and feel like El Salvador. That is an emerging country, third world. And hell, I felt safer in El Salvador than I do oftentimes walking around Chicago. But play emerging market games, win emerging market prizes. The United States is starting to look a lot more like China and a lot more like Argentina than any of these other sponsored podcasts are going to be able to admit to you. I'll tell you the truth. And by the way, this is not red versus blue, left versus right, blah, blah, blah. This has already started, guys. Remember your emerging market Chinese social media apps during the last administration when we learned that they were censoring Facebook, censoring Twitter, censoring Instagram, taking off posts that talked against the political view of COVID? What does that remind you of? Censored internet speech? What does that remind you of? China. Buying 10% of Intel as the US government, what does that remind you of? China. Deploying the military into the heart of the largest cities in your country, what does that remind you of? El Salvador. So what? We're going to get censored internet speech. So you're not allowed to say, you're not allowed to have free speech. You're not allowed to speak truth. You're not allowed to discover truth. And we're going to get state-owned companies. Fiscal dominance, swimming in debt, housing crisis. Gotta stack sats, guys. You have to stack sats. It is the exit door. I'm going to bring this back to the pensions. So how do we also know that the gig is up? We've talked about in Chicago, our pensions are underwater. That means our police force is underfunded. Our firefighters are underfunded. Our teachers are underfunded. No wonder we have some of the highest crime rates in the world. And we need the military to make sure I can go get my groceries. And so what do we see? We see more pensions piling into Bitcoin. This is New York State Common Retirement Fund, $200 billion fund. They are embracing Bitcoin. Next, Air Canada's pension fund reveals a $161 million Bitcoin allocation. This is Canada's first large pension fund with a Bitcoin allocation. So it will just keep coming. I expect pensions, endowments, and sovereigns. You're going to lose with bonds and stocks. The 60-40 portfolio is dead. We've said it on the show a million times. We're going to continue to be proven right. I'm very, very, very confident in that. If you want real returns, you have to own something else. That something else is very obviously Bitcoin and gold for now. For me, Bitcoin is obviously going to be the best performing winner. Pensions are rolling into it. We are starting to look like an emerging market. Play emerging market games, win emerging market prizes. When the U.S. runs fiscal dominance, pressures the Fed, and weaponizes the dollar, that's emerging market behavior. And the prize you win is emerging market outcomes. Inflation, capital flight, collapsing bond markets. The only difference this time is the exit valve isn't dollars. It's Bitcoin. Traditionally, in Africa, in Latin America, the exit valve is the US dollar. You get a black market for the US dollar. You see people fleeing the Argentine peso or the Ghanaian cedi or the naira for dollars. This time, it is Americans and those in the West that will be fleeing dollars for Bitcoin. But make no mistake, extremely high murder rates, underfunded and collapsing education, destroyed pensions, massive deficits, and a national military. That is not El Salvador. That is Chicago. And by the way, this is not left-right. This is not blue-red. The last administration was literally censoring our internet speech. We will continue to look more like China and more like Argentina until we get back on a sound money standard. The harder the money, the more society prospers. Unfortunately, places I love the most are going to have to learn that the hard way. Okay, you guys love when we check in on AI and try and break down how it is impacting the economy and the overlap with Bitcoin. So today, AI equals the deflationary shark. Let's get into it. What do I mean by that? Oh boy, more unemployment stats. The unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds is up to 10%. Say that one more time. I just feel for the youth. I really, really do. Man, part of my purpose, I feel, is to lead the younger generations to a more prosperous time. The unemployment rate for 16 to 24-year-olds is up to 10%. Earlier this year, its 2-year change got up to over 3%. First time in history we've seen that much of an increase without the economy being in a recession. Next, why AI is replacing some jobs faster than others. So we've talked about this a lot on this show. We haven't gone into this much detail, though, of which sectors are getting disrupted by AI. So let's do that. Okay, there's a lot of text on here, so I'm going to skim through it. Definitely pause if you're watching, read through it, and then catch up with us if you need to. But here we go. The jobs getting hit hard. So the jobs that are getting impacted the most are software development. They're getting hammered. Customer support. They're getting hammered. Finance jobs getting hammered. The jobs that aren't getting hammered as much: healthcare, construction, and education. And there's a direct link between the industries that are getting replaced by AI and the ones that aren't. And that link is how much data is available on these industries and how much manual labor is required to perform in that industry. For example, AI and robotics is not at the point where they are doing construction instead of humans. Healthcare. A human being still performs a lot of healthcare, and there isn't a lot of data records that AI can learn from to perform these. Education is another one. You are not sending your kindergartner into a building and having them taught by a robot, at least not now. There is still a human element. There is still manual labor to be performed by a human. Now, software development, writing code, yes, the code that you're using on apps is now being written by AI. Customer support, when you have an issue with Microsoft, with Meta, with Instagram, you are now talking to AI. Finance, crunching. I mean, I remember watching my buddies go to college, accumulate college debt to learn how to use this thing called Excel. And I literally would be like, you guys are robots. That's how you're going to spend your life? Working on a spreadsheet? What the hell? And so, yeah, now a literal robot is replacing that. And so, furthermore, my point, so we see this tweet thread here. This guy David tweets, by 2030, all jobs will be replaced by AI and robots easily. The U.S. labor force is about 170 million workers. About 80 million of those jobs include hands-on work. Automated systems can work 4 shifts a week, replacing all physical labor. Lynn, shout out Lynn, love Lynn. It's not that this many robots can't be built. It's that robots still won't be as good as humans at many tasks, especially in the field within the 4 to 5 year time frame. Robots will have impacts, of course, but I think they'll displace a lot fewer than you describe here by 2030. And then a loyal listener, I assume, so Jason G, shout out Jason G, especially if you're listening again. I appreciate this. He said, as Jack Mallers says, it won't be the manual labor that's replaced. It'll be the white-collar jobs that just enter or interpret data. Boom, cha-ching. That's a loyal listener. That's someone who's picking up what I'm putting down. That's absolutely true, which brings me to my next slide here from Barefoot Student. Data from the Federal Reserve shows that among recent college graduates, the unemployment rates for majors once heralded as tickets to high salaries, high status jobs like computer engineering and computer science were 7.5% and 6.1% respectively. Whoa. Unemployment rates for computer science majors and computer engineering majors, 7.5% and 6.1%. Whoa. In contrast, construction service majors, their employment rate was 0.7%. Bingo, guys, bingo. The quiet part out loud. What happened to blue-collar workers when China became the world's factory is happening to white-collar workers with AI. 100%. We've already lived through this. So what am I talking about? Dollar as the world reserve currency. That means you've hyper-financialized. Businesses like Apple seek out high margins, cheap labor costs, cheap production costs, and higher stock price. So what do? They fire everyone in America that's making their iPhone because employing Americans and ensuring they have a high quality of life is a lot more expensive and a lot more detrimental to my margins than doing it in China out of Wuhan. And so I go manufacture the iPhone in China. I import it here into the United States, and my stock price goes up because my margins are up, because my profit is up. Everyone wins. in that hyper-financialized dollar world reserve currency world. Except who? Blue-collar workers. The Rust Belt, the middle of America got destroyed. And what did we see? Delinquency payments on credit cards, missed payments on mortgages, defaults everywhere. These people have outstanding liabilities. They have outstanding loans. The same is true for the white collar. AI is coming to wreck the white collar. The actual job security is building real stuff again, not just financial engineering, real engineering. Building factories, working with your hands. It's broad daylight. This is going to be extremely, extremely, extremely disruptive. You're seeing Microsoft, you're seeing companies like Meta go through layoffs at all-time high earnings. You guys want a good example? Look at Strike. We're an immensely profitable business, growing like crazy. We have 80 people. And I never want to hire anybody. I take our cash flows and I go right into Bitcoin. AI will continue to write our code. We'll continue to automate as much as we can. We'll continue to sweep our profits into Bitcoin. And really the idea here is that AI is deflationary. So, Luke had this awesome quote, "We're in Jaws, the dead girl is already washed up, but nobody sees the shark yet." And that's Luke's assessment on AI, is that we're starting to see jobs data come in brutal. Combination of tariffs that we talked about earlier and AI. 16 to 24-year-olds, 1 in every 10 16 to 24-year-olds is unemployed, can't find a job. Entry-level jobs are being swallowed by AI. And again, it's a symptom of the design. The design of the system is that Meta should optimize for higher margins, lower costs, and so they fire all the humans and employ all the robots. Right? Duh. That's exactly what happened with China. All of our manual labor jobs are in China. And all of the middle of America is unemployed, poor, can't afford a house. It's a symptom of the system. White collar is next. AI will disrupt. And what is the government going to do about it? They're going to cut rates to zero, grow, stimulus, 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 stimulus. If white collar jobs get crushed and all the people with mortgages and big fancy Amex card and computer science Harvard engineers are getting fired, we'll pay you $500,000 to go build a factory in Idaho. And the government will finance it. They're going to print their way out. And so really my point on the AI chapter, AI accelerates deflation, fiat accelerates debt. They cannot coexist. Bitcoin is the bridge. And so the idea is, AI is deflationary. It brings down the costs of stuff. And that's a great thing. It's only not a great thing in a fiat world. They act oppositely. Deflation is the natural state of the market. We all work and build tools that are efficient and bring the costs down of everything. We're making everything more accessible. We're making everything more attainable. We're making everything cheaper. Think about how cheap it is to access information nowadays. I had tweeted this recently that, humanity was hamstrung by information being scarce and money being abundant. So information scarcity is that, we didn't have the access to learn and to execute at our fingertips. And money being abundant is fiat. It's just being printed. And with AI and Bitcoin, we've engineered the opposite, where money is finally scarce with Bitcoin and information is finally abundant with AI. And so AI is inherently deflationary. It makes the access to information and the ability to perform and execute, brings it so anyone can do anything now. So much cheaper to learn, so much cheaper to be healthy, so much cheaper to build a business. That's great, except in a world built on debt, in a world built on fiat. They collide. There's going to be blood. They cannot coexist. Bitcoin is the bridge between the old world and the new world. I said this in an interview recently, but a lot of what I view myself and other Bitcoiners as is There's this old world that's decaying, and everyone feels the Titanic ship is sinking. And there's this prosperous new world over on the other side of the waters. But it's scary, and who knows if it's going to work. And what Bitcoiners are doing is they're building the bridge from the old world to the new world. And people like us on Mailbag Monday is we're walking out into the middle of the bridge, we're turning around and looking at everyone in the old world, and we're showing them that it won't break. The last 13 years, to anyone that's been willing to listen to me, I've told them, stay humble, stack sats, buy Bitcoin. It's our way out. We can do this. The story of humanity is engineering a better world. We got this. And we're all standing out in the middle of the bridge and looking at everyone that needs help and showing them it's safe. You can walk. We're going to get to the other side. It won't break. It's the bridge. It's the bridge. Okay, next. In the end, it was always Bitcoin. So I do like to end these with a little bit of Bitcoin. I know the price is down, so I'm just going to give you guys some quick perspective here. Bitcoin has spent less than 3 days at this price level. It's healthy to revisit and spend some time here. We're entering the weakest month for BTC seasonally, which is followed by its historically 2 best months. Go outside, touch grass, breathe, enjoy life. I generally agree with this. This to me was, I've been in Bitcoin again for 13 years, and this to me was even jaw-dropping. This is the probability of positive Bitcoin returns per holding period. If you hold Bitcoin for 1 day, you actually have a better chance than not to have a positive return, which is insane. The odds are in your favor just buying Bitcoin today. That's at 53% chance you have a positive return for holding Bitcoin for a day. A week is 55%, a month 57%, but then it starts to get really interesting the longer you hold. If you hold Bitcoin for a quarter, you have a 63% chance of positive return. If you hold it for a full year, 76%. This is crazy. If you hold it for 3 years, 5 years, and 10 years, you effectively have a 100% chance of a positive return. And the point is simple. Stay humble, stack sats, and hold. I'm wearing my HODL hoodie. See, let me turn around. You guys can see it. I've got my HODL Bitcoin Talk hoodie on. The point is just relax, breathe. Markets are violent. Markets aren't fair. Everyone's, why is the Bitcoin price going down? I don't know. Someone decided to sell. I have no idea. It doesn't matter, though. The point is just hold. The future is abundantly clear. Jerome Powell, the federal government, Scott Bessent, Donald Trump, they could not be more clear. The post-$71 is over. It's no longer in our benefit. We are changing global capital flows as we know it. The world is going through hyper change. Everything in the data, everything about interest rates, everything coming from the White House is unequivocally true. And just hold, just relax. My dad has come on this show and he said, markets either try and wear you out or scare you out. Don't let it wear you down. Don't let it scare you out. Just relax, hold on. If the Bitcoin price is really doing that much to your mental health, you got too much leverage. I've said 1,000,000 times, consume only less than you earn. Focus on relationships, family, health. Things like my diet, things like my relationships, things like my exercise have been so critical to my ability to acquire more Bitcoin. I kid you not. Maybe someday I'll talk about, my own health rabbit holes, but just, take the opportunity to focus on yourself. This puts it in perspective. If you can find a way to hold Bitcoin for 3 years, you have near 100% chance of a positive return. This data is absolutely mind-boggling. And I thought this was funny. Let me get my big head out of the way. This is the historical Bitcoin chart, and that blue arrow is where everyone on the internet is tagging me, freaking out. There's nothing to be worried about. Markets will figure itself out. Just breathe. Just breathe. I cannot tell you when to buy Bitcoin to make money tomorrow. I could tell you when to save in Bitcoin to have a better future. And that's every single day, as long as you have an ability to just hold. All right. Quick Strike updates. We released this new onboarding video for people that are new to Bitcoin. So when you download Strike and you get started, there's now an Instagram style video by yours truly that lets everyone know all that Strike is capable of to support you. Like, Strike is a Bitcoin financial services firm. We're not like a speculative casino, right? And so I'll play the video real quick. But it's, we've gotten a lot of feedback that newcomers could really use a little video to show them all that Strike's capable of and get them on their Bitcoin journey. And I want Strike to be the place you guys send your friends and family. So check it out. I'm curious what you think.
Yo, what's going on? My name is Jack Mallers. I'm the CEO of Strike, and I wanted to welcome you to the best place to make your move into Bitcoin. Let me show you around the Strike app. We've got 2 tabs, one for Bitcoin and one for cash. Your cash tab is how you get started. It's how you fund your account. You can use payment methods like a bank transfer or a wire transfer. You can even get your paycheck into Strike and convert any percentage of it into Bitcoin. And check this, in most US states, you can now get a loan against your Bitcoin. The Bitcoin tab, it's all about buying Bitcoin. You can hit buy and purchase Bitcoin instantly. You can set up a target order and acquire Bitcoin at a specific price. Our fees are transparent and they're tiered. So the more you buy, the cheaper your fees. And check this, if you set up a recurring purchase after the first week, we waive the fees. And when you want to withdraw your Bitcoin from Strike, you can always withdraw it for free. Lastly, your account page. It's how you access the ability to pay bills or security features such as 2FA. You can find it all on your account. Strike is built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners, and thank you for joining us on your Bitcoin journey.
So thought that was pretty cool because I don't think everyone knows all we do. No fee DCA, free withdrawals, target orders, pay your bills in Bitcoin, get your paycheck, convert any percentage of it into Bitcoin. You could also pay bills with dollars, by the way. I know some people ask that. You could pay bills with both. We've had over $50 million worth of bills paid on Strike already. Borrow against your Bitcoin, no credit check, instant. I mean, it's just like the dominant best way to do Bitcoin. So we appreciate all the support. And this is in a direct response to people that are suggesting their friends, suggesting their family. And our goal is to take no coiners and make sure that they become Bitcoiners in a way in which Bitcoin drastically changes their life. And so we have the tools for that, but a tool is only as good as they are useful. And so hopefully that's helpful to your friends and your family when you bring them on to Strike. And again, thank you for doing that and for your support. And then the other update I have is we're starting to roll out refinancing your loan. So this is something I've talked about for a while. You know, how I use Strike and live on Bitcoin is by borrowing against it, and then the ability to refinance within the app by clicking a button. So this isn't fully rolled out to everyone, but our goal is by the end of the month. So by the next time I talk to you guys, it should be. And so be on the lookout for this, refinancing your loan. We're very, very, very excited about this. And as I mentioned before, our lending product is just getting started. We're already one of the largest lenders in the world by loan book size, but it's only been live for some months, and we have so much to build. We're so excited to make it the best Bitcoin collateralized lending product in the world. Last but not least, 21, and this will be short because you guys know I can't say much. We're in a quiet period. Our proof of reserves remains. We have not lessened or increased our Bitcoin position held in escrow here. And I'm just working on getting this transaction hopefully approved. So I can't say anything about this. So again, apologize for that, but it is what's best for everybody, including Bitcoin. Okay, longer episode. I was really fired up.